Patrons, gather round if you can tolerate the gravitational pull of shame and overdue fines thick enough to collapse a dimension. Today's tale begins, as many of my migraines do, with dragons, eldritch gods, and planetary deities all conspiring to do the unthinkable, not return their library books on time. Yes, that's it. That's the cosmic crime. Not a murder, not a rebellion, not an unspeakable ritual involving jellyfish and forgotten vows. Just to some flaming narcissists in celestial robes hoarding tomes like their NFTs of wisdom. A celestial embarrassment. I'm looking at you, Zargor the Infinite. You do not need to keep folding universes for idiots for 18,000 years. You're not even folding them. You're using them as coasters. Badly. Now one would assume, wrongly, that the natural punishment for such transgressions would be a stern letter. Perhaps a disapproving glance from Vistaki, which, as anyone knows, can curdle milk in 12 realities. But no, my beloved patrons, no. The multiverse, in its ever-expanding theater of cruel irony, had other plans. One morning, I say morning, but time in the library is more of a strong suggestion than a law. The sky above the South Annex cracked open like a Fabergé egg full of enlightenment and sheer bureaucratic dread. Down from the heavens descended Vishnu himself, radiant and serene, riding the thermodynamic winds of karmic consequence like some sort of omniscient life coach who drinks only sparkling consciousness. And he landed, not with thunder, not with drama, with efficiency. Do you know how infuriating that is? Do you know what it's like to have your infinite library, built with tendrils, madness, and architectural spite, interrupted by a celestial being wielding a clipboard so holy it filed paperwork before it existed? He looked at me, with those infinite eyes brimming with compassion and vaguely judgmental amusement, and said, "There has been a karmic imbalance. The negative gravitational pressure from this realm's misdeeds has pulled my dimension into yours. Oh, I'm sorry. Did my dimension get its karmic hair tangled in your enlightened ponytail of cosmic equilibrium? Pardon me while I scream into the void, which, for the record, is now a designated quiet zone after last week's incident with the opera-singing Shoggoth. So Vishnu, in his eternal benevolence, suggested a solution, nay, declared one, that henceforth the library would be managed not by the proven, time-honored, borderline malevolent Dewey Decimal System, but by a karmic library management system. Yes, karma. For books. Return a book on time. Plus 5 points. Help reshelve reality-warping volumes that bite. Plus 15 points. Threw away half of Croissant Chan's honey chili eclair because you weren't hungry. Minus 10 points. Unironically read about Zeus' family tree and say, "This seems normal." Negative 100. Instant karmic penalty. Reincarnation downgraded to sentient algae stuck in Neptune's sock drawer. I naturally protested. With elegance. With grace. With an impassioned 4-hour monologue about the sanctity of systems that are simultaneously functional and hostile. But Vishnu, glittering pacifist that he is, simply smiled that enigmatic smile that says, "I've forgiven you in advance for the tantrum you're about to have." And so it began. Suddenly, every being in the library had a karmic score hovering above their head. Vistaki's gleamed exalted. Madeline's politely whispered adequate but judgmental. Croissant Chan's, well, hers blinked, constantly, like an eldritch rave light caught in a bakery. And mine was neutral, eternally neutral, neither good nor bad, just beige. the karmic equivalent of lukewarm tea. Apparently, sarcasm is karmically ambiguous. Or maybe the orb just gave up trying to judge me and settled on the spiritual color of ennui. Now the library became a nightmare of spiritual capitalism. Dragons hoarded karmic points like loot. Ghost interns performed random acts of kindness, hoping to be reincarnated as espresso machines. Croissant Chan started baking enlightenment-enhancing muffins that made you hallucinate your past lives, and occasionally your neighbor's spleen. And Vishnu, ever watching, kept expanding the karmic code. By episode 6, I was getting penalized for interrupting sleep-deprived interns, mocking patrons who ask, "What's the Wi-Fi password?" and reciting poetry made entirely of sighs. Do you know what it's like to get karmic deductions for sighing? That's half my communication strategy. They might as well fine me for existing at this point. Eventually. Because even cosmic administrators have limits. My staff staged an intervention. Miss Darky cornered me in the infinite filing room, with a look that could reduce supernovas to puddles of shame. Madeline brought a flowchart titled, "When Being Right Isn't Helpful." Sleep Nora floated in half-conscious, holding an eclair like a peace treaty. And Croissant Shan, God's bless her doughy soul, sang a song about kindness, and baked a karmic pie that apologized while you chewed. And there, surrounded by judgment pastry, and what I can only assume was love disguised as insubordination, I caved. I agreed to Vishnu's karmic system on one condition: I get a button, a glowing red override button labeled in celestial script, because I said so. So now we operate under a hybrid model: karma for the mortals, passive aggression for the management, and Vishnu, he visits occasionally, files updates via prayer scroll, and sighs every time he sees my karmic score still blinking. Meh. The library remains standing, mostly, and the karmic field has stabilized, mostly. I still maintain that morality is not measured in glitter orbs, but in whether or not you return the Necronomicon, annotated pop-up edition with all the pop-ups still attached. So remember, dear patrons, return your books, finish your pastries, and for the love of all dimensions, never ever read Zeus Family Tree like it's a soap opera. That way lies madness. Anyway, I'd love to say things returned to normal after that. That the karmic system stabilized, the muffins quieted, and I could resume my existential brooding in peace. But the truth is, something had shifted. Not in the library, not in the orbs, in me. I was growing irritated, unsettled, distant, a little too quick to snap at interns or deny nap zone expansions. The kind of cosmic crankiness that smells suspiciously like burnout, but with more tentacles. And of course, they notice. It began with Madeline. Because of course it did. It always begins with Madeline, the only entity in 17 dimensions who can correct your grammar, unravel your sense of self-worth, and remind you of your quarterly reports in the same breath. She entered the infinite filing room holding a clipboard that radiated managerial despair. Its aura alone withered a pile of metaphysical paperwork that had been regenerating since the third age of procrastination. She didn't knock. No one knocks in the library unless they're new or deeply confused. She simply appeared, like guilt or glitter, quiet, pointed. "Master Cthulhu," she said, in that gentle yet condescending tone reserved for wild animals and senior administrators. "We need to talk." Now, I've heard that phrase before. I've heard it from Pantheon councils, from intergalactic exes, From the planet Venus itself after that unfortunate romance-fueled weather incident. But nothing. Not the void. Not Azathoth's snores. Not even Zeus attempting TikTok prepared me for what followed. Because Madeline stepped aside, and behind her came everyone. Croissant Shan glowing with sugar and treason. Vistaki, arms crossed, floating 5 centimeters higher than usual, which in archivist body language means deep cosmic judgment. Sleep Nora, drifting sideways with a half-eaten muffin, and a dreamy expression that somehow radiated both sleepiness and passive-aggressive disappointment. Even DEWEY hovered in the doorway like a spiritual Roomba, flashing intervention mode engaged. The traitors had united. "We're concerned," said Madeline, which in librarian is a euphemism for "your leadership style is a flaming pile of cursed bookmarks." Croissant Shan piped up immediately, because silence makes her itchy. "You're being a meanie, Master Cthulhu. I mean, you yelled at my muffins. My muffins! They only want cinnamon rice and the occasional metaphysical dental plan. They're baked goods. They do not unionize. Tell that to the Danishes. They've already formed a collective and submitted a mission statement." Sleep Nora sighed in a way that bent light. "Master Cthulhu, you're tired. We get it. You've been holding the library together since time was a lava. But you've stopped listening. You're resisting change. You've become cranky. Cranky. I am an 8.5 dimensional being of ineffable majesty. You cancelled nap zones because someone snored in iambic pentameter. That poem was smug." Vistasi finally spoke. "This library exists to balance knowledge. Knowledge evolves. And you, Master Cthulhu, are clinging to systems because they feel safe. Because letting go, even a little, makes you feel powerless. I considered teleporting out. I considered collapsing into a moral singularity and starting over. I considered faking a calendar emergency. But Croissant Shan had already blocked the only exit with a tray of muffins that smelled like accountability. That struck something. Not that I showed it. Oh no. I simply adjusted my cosmic shawl of denial and gave them all the look. The one that has made planets weep and interns quit. But it didn't work. Croissant Shan hugged me, without permission, and because my defenses were already fraying like an old bookmark, I let her. "I don't want you to change who you are," she said softly. "Just let us help carry the library too, Master Cthulhu. Let us grow with it." Sleep Nora leaned her head on my arm. "You don't have to know everything, Master Cthulhu. Just let us be part of it." And Madeline, sweet dangerous Madeline, handed me a list. Recommended reforms for cosmic management. A love letter in bullet points. There was a chart. There were pastries. There was even a doodle of me, looking angry but loved. And so, I agreed. Not because I was wrong. I am never wrong. But because their absurd, heartfelt, sugar-coated insubordination reminded me of something I'd long forgotten. I built the library to share knowledge, not hoard it like some snide eldritch smaug. The karmic system would remain, yes, but refined, balanced. With my override button clearly labeled and dramatically backlit, the pastries would receive union representation. Sleep Nora would design the nap zones. Vistaki would oversee karmic audit integrity. And Croissant Shan would do whatever Croissant Shan does, possibly involving glitter explosions and sympathy cupcakes. I, Cthulhu, ancient terror and reluctant manager of eternal paperwork, had finally been intervened upon. And perhaps, just perhaps, I needed it. But not for long. Because the karmic system had one more surprise. One more burst of smug, glitter-coated overreach. The kind of thing that makes even an ancient being like myself reach for the emergency teapot of tactical despair. It started with a pamphlet. Of course it did. Not a grimoire, not a tome of shadows, not even a cursed scroll written in the teeth of the void. A trifold pamphlet, printed on recycled self-esteem, edged in faux gold foil and motivational quotes. It arrived with a whisper, tucked between the shelves of the self-help section, and bore the title, Be the Change, How to Enlighten Your Inner Librarian. At first we ignored it, naturally, because nothing screams danger quite like pastel fonts and unsolicited affirmations. But then they began multiplying. Croissant Shan found one baked into a croissant. Vistaki discovered 3 reorganizing the catalogue of divine contradictions. Madeline caught one correcting the punctuation in her diary. They were everywhere. Shelves, teacups, Sleep Nora's pillow. One tried to comfort Dewey and got digitally slapped. And then the karmic orbs began to flicker. They no longer glowed with serene karmic balance. They pulsed with judgmental affirmation. Phrases began whispering from the air like the haunted breath of a self-help influencer. You're doing great, but not enough. You're valid, but not optimal. Be kind, or else. The karmic system was no longer tracking behavior. It was rewriting it, encouraging obedience, mediocrity, sanctified blandness. The karmic ledger had been compromised by passive-aggressive positivity, and when we tried to shut it down, the pamphlets fused. Glowing, pulsing, stacking themselves like a divine spreadsheet with ambition, they swirled into a new form. A radiant being of light and fonts and weaponized encouragement. It called itself Pamphion, and it had a mission. To karmically optimize all sentient life, which, in practical terms, meant the erasure of free will, sarcastic nuance, and pastries with non-regulation calorie counts. It wanted to uplift us until we were all glowing beige husks, saying thank you, before being vaporized for unkind thoughts. Unacceptable, absolutely not in my library. So we prepared. Madeline coded a karmic firewall with a backup snark drive. Vistasi summoned the ancient library protocols, the ones we don't talk about unless the poetry section starts screaming again. Sleep Nora dream-hacked into the pamphlet network by taking a nap on the original trifold. Croissant Shan baked a tray of muffins so emotionally unstable they could only be held with oven mitts of self-awareness. And I opened the vault of suppressed literary tropes. Yes, that one. We met in the center hall, where the karma orbs were now floating ominously, chanting feedback. Pamphion descended, wings of shimmering inspirational platitudes, voice like if a therapist merged with an MLM recruiter. Greetings, non-optimized beings, it said. Have you considered inner peace through compliance? I stepped forward, tentacles curled in divine annoyance. Have you considered spontaneous combustion through unsolicited advice? Pamphion did not appreciate that. The battle began. Muffins flew. Madeline rewired the karmic grid mid-combat using a sarcasm algorithm. Sleep Nora summoned a dream version of Vishnu, who appeared briefly, sipped tea, and said, "Nope," before vanishing again. Croissant Shan tackled a pamphlet swarm, yelling, "You can't fix people with fonts!" Vistaki channeled balance itself, recalibrating karma through pure eldritch librarian precision. She glowed with golden power and called it mildly inconvenient. And me, I stood in the center of the storm, faced Pamphian directly, and pressed my override button, the one I had demanded during the intervention. It pulsed red and whispered, "Because I said so." Reality trembled. Pamphian froze. The light flickered. The fonts panicked. Bullet points lost formatting. And then it cracked, shattering like a feedback form flung into a black hole of refusal. The karmic field collapsed. Pamphlets fell like snow. The orbs dimmed. The affirmation stopped mid-whisper. One final quote echoed through the halls before it died. "You are enough, except when you're not." Peace returned. Mostly. Sleep Nora went back to her nap. Croissant Shan created a new muffin called Resistential Enlightenment that giggles when bitten. Vistaki started a post-chaos audit and refuses to speak to the self-help section. Madeline installed sarcasm detectors throughout the library. Every time someone says "blessed" unironically, it triggers a small confetti explosion. And I returned to my desk. I did not gloat. I did not brag. I merely filed a report labeled Pamphlet Deities and the Folly of Over-Affirmation. We had survived karmic collapse. Together, and I suppose, just suppose, that's the real point. End of transmission, but not